Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. It is Week 18. Starter sit for 8 AFC home games, including 2 of them on Saturday. We should have a fun Saturday of football with the AFC North, Cleveland at Baltimore and Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. A couple of big games there. We're going to update you on who's resting players. We're going to answer your questions at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Did I say that right? Fantasy football at CBS? Yes, I did. And I've only been saying that for 15 years. It felt wrong. Fantasy football at cbsi.com, the letter I. And we got a lot of Week 18 emails yesterday. I said in your Week 18 emails. We got a lot of them. So I'll read some of them on today's show. I'll read some on tomorrow's show. Good morning, Heath.
I think we should do a mailbag now.
I mean, we could. We probably only have about 5 minutes of content if we did that, but...
we just make fun of Dan for 40 minutes and then, answer some emails.
Oh, if we got Dan on the show, we'd have 35 minutes of content. Yeah, for sure. You know what? I'm going to start with this. Why Week 18? Also, FYI, for every game we preview, we're going to start with the 2025 question, and then we'll get into the Week 18 starts and sits. But he said, why do you play in Week 18? Well, we did get some responses. I put a few in the notes. Eddie says, in his league, Week 18 is a free-for-all involving all 24 teams in the league. The team that scores the most points in Week 18 takes home a small prize. Points are tallied for all players on your roster, starters and bench, except for any players that are on IR. So they do like a bonus week. Okay. He also has a standard score. No, he said starter sit, full PPR, standard scoring. So I'm going to go.
I think we got to be a little aware sometimes. Like some people think that standard scoring is now PPR.
Mm-hmm. I think that, maybe. He needs to make up 35 points in this league. Pick one. Garendo, Warren, Abdullah, Ray Davis, Blake Corum.
You just summed up Week 18. Thank you.
I like Garendo this week.
Yes, that sounds great.
No, come on. We got to really answer because Corum is going to get a huge workload apparently.
No, but okay. So here's the thing. I talk about this a lot throughout this season about like the uncertainty of groups of guys and how close they are together. I'm not going to express certainty when about like Week 18 calls. I'll give leans, but like I have Amir Abdullah, Jalen Warren, Blake Corum, and Isaac Garendo back to back.
Okay. Okay, well that's fine.
The first thing that I would do with these running backs is who's playing with their starters and who's playing backups with backups. Like Blake Corum, Ray Davis, Kenneth Gainwell now. There's one more. I forget. It'll come to me.
Chiefs.
Who?
The Chiefs.
The Chiefs.
Carson Steele.
Can I give you a little context on that before you go any further? Because I looked at Kansas City the last 2 times they benched their starters in Week 17 or 18. So in 2020, they rested their starters. Darwin Thompson had 21 touches. He had 110 total yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 7 catches. 2023, just last year, LaMichael Pirine didn't have as good of a game, but he had 24 touches and he had over 100. So he had 109 total yards.
Who do they play?
They played the Chargers actually both times. Last year, they beat the Chargers with Easton Stick at quarterback. They beat them 13-12 in Week 18. In 2020, they got killed 38-21. Justin Herbert had a huge game. But in both instances, the Chiefs gave their guys 21 or more touches, and both of them had over 100 total yards, and Darwin Thompson had like a massive fantasy game.
Right. So again, I think it's case by case. So you're talking about a Chargers team that was completely terrible last year.
Right.
And
it also quit.
Chiefs, they're playing a team that has to win.
Right.
Who are you
with
talking
a great
about?
defense.
Chiefs today? No, yeah, I was talking about like the Blake Corum.
I understand that. So I think it's all case by case. So like Khalil Herbert stepping in is in a different situation than Blake Corum. Backup stepping in. The Bengals are going to go full go with all their starters. Blake Corum is playing with Jimmy Garoppolo. Who knows what on the offensive line? Who knows what at receiver? And Seattle is trying, I'm sure, to get, depending on how they feel about Geno Smith, that's $2 million if they get a win just for him. So I I don't know. Like a lot of these situations are just a little nerve wracking if you are playing with some of these guys. Like Ray Davis, I think is in a pretty good spot because the Patriots are going to rest some guys too, and they stink.
Yeah. All right. This is from. This is from Eric. I was just watching the show. Heath mentioned why he wanted to hear why people are playing in Week 18. My league does a Pro Bowl in Week 18. We take some of the buy-in money and reserve it for Week 18, where we can build a lineup of anyone we want, and the high score for that week gets the cash.
So that's kind of the same thing as the first guy, right?
No, because in this case, they get to pick. It's almost DFS. They get to pick anyone they want. The first guy, it's your lineup, just who scores the most points. Well, actually, I don't know. He said, yeah, it's a free for all. I think that this is different.
Like,
I
can
think
two people choose the same guy?
In theory. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay, so they do that. We also have Brian from Maine. Why do I play in Week 18? So he actually likes it. He thinks there's more strategy. He thinks that you can kind of separate the best managers by playing in Week 18. It's not just which players are on your team. You actually have to have more strategy in it. It's my skills as a fantasy manager versus yours. That's what he says.
But the thing about that, though, is if it's a true championship, it's just two managers.
Yeah.
So basically, it's who can get to the waiver wire first.
A little bit. Yeah.
I mean, it's not necessarily like I'm smarter than you because,
well, I think about our magazine league. And especially depending on how waivers are done, like you should almost reset FAB to $100 for everyone if you're going to do that. Because in our magazine league, Adam got the first waiver pick week 15, week 16, and week 17 because he had the worst record going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And just kept the worst record throughout the playoffs.
It's kind of true. It's a great strategy.
Yeah. I remember when Schaefer called you out for it and you tried to act like you didn't do it, but it worked beautifully.
I didn't do that. I didn't. All right. Time for some more emails, some starter sit questions here. This is from N.
I did see a few though that said that week 18 was, they do total points leagues. So those are a little different.
Should I sit Devon Achane for Bucky Irving and Josh Jacobs?
I would do it for Bucky Irving. I would not do it for Jacobs just because the Packers may pull guys at some point during the game, depending on the score.
I actually had Jacobs projected higher than HN and HN projected higher than Bucky. But yeah.
Laporta or Jonnu Smith?
Laporta.
Yeah, I agree.
And said he voted for us for the podcast awards. So thank you.
Thanks.
Sportspodcastgroup.com. Vote now. Best fantasy in gaming.
Thank you. I think looking at the this all bust team that I'm putting together, I was like, oh, who's the tight end? It's like Laporta's finished amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Kelsey's finished strong enough, that it had a good enough season that it's like hard to call him a bust. He's a bust for, I think, where we thought of him or what we thought of him. But he had enough good games.
Kincaid.
It's Kincaid, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it was a 2-round difference between Laporta. Like Laporta was going at the 2-3 turn in some leagues. Even there.
Actually, Kelsey's ADP passed Laporta, so Kelsey was number one tight end.
But Kelsey was 1.5 points better. Laporta averaged 10.8 fantasy points per game.
He closed the season. So he still helped people a lot in the playoffs.
Yeah, if they didn't drop him. From Marlowe from Indiana, I play in week 18. LOL. Should I pick up Blake Corum or Ray Davis? PPR.
I mean, for me, I'm going Davis.
I'm going Corum. I wonder what percentage of the touches Ray Davis is going to get. Is Ty Johnson getting set as well? Does Frank Gore Jr. get to make an appearance?
I will find out, I guess, if he's elevated off the practice squad.
All right, this is from Ryan. He says, hey, Marty, Rust, Ray, Frank, Wayne, and Roland. If they hadn't had the first two in there, I would have had no chance. Marty, Rust, Ray, Frank, Wayne, and Roland. That's Ozark, right?
Maybe. I don't.
Definitely Marty.
Yeah.
Rust. Yeah.
100% Ozark. Good call.
I don't remember who Ray, Frank, Wayne, and Roland are.
I think was Ray her dad or her uncle?
Rust, I think, was her uncle.
Well, there were two uncles, right?
Rust was definitely one of them.
Okay. I think Ray was one of the trailer park dads.
As much as I love that show, I don't remember all the characters. It does, by the way, so freak me out with that Wolfman movie that she's in. That when I see her in the commercials, like the trailers. I'm like,
I haven't seen it. I don't even know.
One of my favorite quotes that I can never ever say on the show.
From the movie? From the Ozark?
From the show. Like one of the best quotes ever. I mean, she had several, but
did she use profanity in the show?
Once. Just this once.
All right. Ryan's question is Russ or Lamar Jackson?
Lamar.
Yeah, Lamar's QB1.
That's the good thing about the Ravens. Ravens have the first game. They've got the division on the line. Go for it. And they're facing like the worst team in the world. Pick 2, Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, Ray Davis, Jalen Warren, Amir Abdullah.
Taylor's easy.
Yes.
Not non-PPR, by the way.
Non-PPR. Okay. So, I mean, look, Abdullah's in the conversation now for non-PPR after what he did last week, right?
He didn't practice. We should point that out. He didn't practice. So.
Yeah, we got to keep an eye on his status. Or the
Breece Hall, Ray Davis, Jalen Warren, Amir
I go
Abdullah.
Jalen Warren. He also missed practice as well, but as long as he's healthy, I go Warren.
Yeah, I've got Breece the highest.
Jalen Warren in non-PPR, Jamie. His 1 touchdown this year.
I mean, I'll go back to something you've been saying for a long time. Dolphins haven't allowed a 50-yard rusher since like week 6. Breece Hall barely scored against Jacksonville.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Hey, happy holidays, everybody. Still time to get your fantasy football champion or biggest loser something from our new fan shop, the Fantasy Football Today new fan shop, powered by ShopSense. It has everything you need from trophies to T-shirts. We've got the gear to make your league unforgettable. All right, so check it out. It's shop.cbssports.com/fantasy. Just peruse a little bit. We like to online shop, right? Shop.cbssports.com/fantasy. There's also the QR code that you can scan, and I'll put a link in the episode description. But it's got memorabilia, it's got sports stuff and non-sports stuff that you're going to love for your home or for your fan cave. Shop.cbssports.com/fantasy. News and notes. Here's an update on who's resting. Well, first of all, Jalen Hurts is still in the concussion protocol, but they're going to rest their starters. Saquon Barkley is not going to play, not going to go for the record against the Giants. And the Rams are resting their starters as well.
What's Boston Scott doing?
That's what I said yesterday, right? Or Tuesday. Yeah. Let's bring back Boston.
We need Boston Scott to go score a touchdown.
Isn't he on somebody's roster?
I think so.
I mean, they'll probably let him go to go score against the Giants.
Yeah.
He's in the Steelers. Oh, no, I think he's a free agent now.
How funny would that be?
It would be pretty funny.
Some people, I'm not going to even hint towards any profanity on the show because I don't want to make Thomas's job harder. But I will say that the quote that people are asking for a hint, it's exactly how I feel about week 18. And it starts with, I don't know.
Okay. I got to find this out. This is so funny. All right. So we'll get it. All right. You know what? Let's just do this. In case you missed the previous 2 shows. Here are the teams that are sitting players that we know. Buffalo, Philadelphia, Kansas City, the Rams. Anyone else that we know for sure?
The Texans may pull guys at some point during the game.
Right, but we don't know. But they said they're already playing their starters. We just don't know. But
right, D'Amico Ryan said everybody needs to be ready.
Okay, but those 4 teams that I mentioned: Buffalo, Philadelphia, Kansas City, and the Rams.
Right, and then the Chargers are the one that we don't know yet because if the Steelers win, they are the 5 on Saturday.
The Steelers are the 5, and the Chargers are locked into the 6.
Correct. If the Steelers lose and the Chargers win, then they are the 5, the Chargers.
And the 5 is much more desirable than the 6. The 5 is going to be the
if they both lose, the Steelers are the 5.
Okay, and the Steelers could pull some players because if the Ravens win the first game, they really should flip the time, shouldn't they? If the Ravens win the first game, then the Steelers are eliminated from the division. And they could still play for the 5 or the 6, but they're eliminated from the division.
I think that was probably the thought, is that the Steelers want to get the 5, so they'll still play their guys no matter what.
Probably. And then you got Green Bay. Green Bay may pull some players, right?
That depends. Do they want to be the 6 or the 7? Because
right.
They still have a chance to beat the 6.
Absolutely. But the Chargers, they're not locked into their seat. I'm sorry, the Rams, they're not locked into their seat. They've decided to rest their players. So the Chargers, the Rams, the Commanders.
Didn't Harbaugh do like a spiel in his press conference or in an interview about why he doesn't rest players?
I would be surprised if he rested guys like sat guys. Like he may start them and treat it like a preseason game. The one guy that I think will play the most of the regulars is Dobbins, because he's 58. I think it's 58 yards shy of $150,000 incentive.
Ooh.
And I would be surprised if Harbaugh did not let him get that.
I just saw the quote in the chat. Thank you, someone, for providing that quote from Ruth. What a great quote. Okay. Anthony Richardson missed practice. We'll see if he's able to play against Jaguars. Josh Dobbs is starting for the 49ers. The Dolphins are preparing for Tyler Huntley to start in a huge game for them at the Jets. They are in the playoffs with a win and a Denver loss, but Denver is playing the Chiefs backups. Drake May is going to start. We don't know if he's going to finish the game. Derek Carr missed practice for the Saints. Alvin Kamara missed practice also. Aaron Jones was limited. He should be good to go for Sunday night game at Detroit, biggest game of the week. Gus Edwards missed practice. James Conner has been ruled out. Miles Sanders could be back this week for Carolina. Austin Eckler could be back this week for Washington. Tajay Spears missed practice. Tony Pollard was limited. Amir Abdullah missed practice with a foot injury. We're hoping that he plays because he had a great role in last week's game. Bucky Irving was limited. He should be fine. And Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong both missed practice. They play on Saturday at Baltimore. It looks like Deontay Foreman will be served to the Wolves, but he could get a lot of carries against the Rams.
They did sign a running back too, and Josh Kelly.
Wide receiver news. Lad McConkey missed practice with a toe injury. We don't think that's serious. Deebo Samuel missed practice with ribs and wrist injuries. Knee? Terry McLaurin missed practice too, but that's not a huge surprise. I never mentioned, like, we did not talk about that game at all. That's the only game that we didn't talk about from last week was the Sunday night game. I mean, AJ Terrell is not usually a guy that shadows a receiver and shuts him down, but he did a fantastic job against Terry McLaurin and probably decided some fantasy championships because of that. McLaurin had one of his worst games. Christian Watson missed practice. Jalen Waddle was limited. They're hopeful for him. And Deontay Johnson is going to play for the Texans this week. A lot of tight end news. Dallas Goedert's been designated to return from IR. I can't imagine you'll see him this week. Both Tampa Bay tight ends, Durham Payne, missed practice, and also Cade Otton missed practice. David Njoku missed practice, not looking good for him on Saturday, which is interesting for Jerry Jeudy. And Hunter Henry was limited with a foot injury. And Tyler Conklin, who's on a bit of a hot streak, he missed practice. And I'll leave it at that. All right, we're going to take a break, come back, and talk about Cleveland at Baltimore after this on Fantasy Football Today.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
We're back on Fantasy Football Today, talking about the first game of the week, Cleveland at Baltimore. All right, here's your 2025 question for this game. Jerry Jeudy 2025 breakout? Question mark.
I think he was a 2024 breakout.
I think he was actually even better in 2022. I want to say he was like pretty good, but could he actually be good for a full season? Jerry Jeudy, like a real fantasy asset?
Yes.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy has 196 40 more yards than he's ever had in his career. And 17 more catches, and he's 84, 11, 66. And a game to play.
He's 11-66.
He's gonna have a 1,200-yard season.
Obviously, it was very concentrated in one part of the year. But what do you think? Like, can he be a start to finish fantasy asset?
I think he could maybe like put up similar numbers in a more evenly distributed way. But this is just a disaster in terms of, like, we have no idea who the quarterback's going to be.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of good options. Like, the one great option, they've basically cast to the curb the last 2 weeks of the season. So I think he'd probably view him as a number 3 wide receiver.
It's kind of interesting. Jerry Jeudy in 2022 averaged 13.6 PPR fantasy points per game, but he was wide receiver 22 per game. This year he's averaging 14 fantasy points per game, even better, but he's wide receiver 28 per game. So he has had a better year, but wide receiver, I guess, was just better this season.
I think you really need to do this calls for the man who Azer stats.
Yeah.
Because especially at the wide receiver position, we've had so many injuries this year. Like Chris Godwin is wide receiver 2. He played 7 games. Rashee Rice is wide receiver 14. He played 4 games. Stephon Diggs is wide receiver 18. He played 8 games. We have so many guys with partial seasons, and that's made it possible for multiple guys to average a lot of fantasy points.
Judy, by the way, if you Azer stat in 2022, he had like 3 games where he barely played. You take away those games, he actually was incredible. You take Rashee Rice, you take away the 1 game Rashee Rice got hurt, he's the wide receiver 2 per game, averaging over 21 points per game this year. All right, on to the starts or sits for Cleveland and Baltimore. Are there any Browns that you want to start?
No.
3 wide receiver league, I'm starting Jerry Jeudy.
I mean, what's the hesitation with Jeudy? Without Njoku, obviously got 18 targets last week. Yeah. What's the hesitation there?
I mean, look, Heath's right. You're starting him in 3 receiver leagues, but I don't think that the Ravens and what they're about to do to the Browns is going to be pretty. So,
yeah.
I wonder though. Like, I think the question is because we expect like this game's going to be over at halftime. Like, does Jerry Jeudy play in the garbage time? Because if so, he could put up some numbers then.
it's a fair point. Is that DTR? Is it Bailey Zappi? Could that help?
Would you rather start Zay Flowers or Jerry Jeudy?
Flowers.
Okay, so on to the Ravens. Jackson, Henry, Andrews at this point must start.
Mm-hmm.
Flowers we talked about yesterday. He's ahead of Jerry Jeudy apparently, but he's not. Forget where he is in the rankings.
I've got him. He's a high end number 2 for me, and I think a high end number 3 for Jamie.
Yep.
Okay. How about Rashad Bateman and Isaiah Likely? Any interest there?
I mean, Bateman is just a boom bust number 3 receiver. You know, if you think they're gonna, get everybody involved, then he's certainly in play. We've seen games where he's had monster performances. We've seen games where he's disappeared. So he's touchdown or bust, and Likely is the same thing.
I got a comment in the chat from Johnny. Any player can look good if you Azer stat them.
Sure.
That sounds like a challenge, Johnny. That would be a fun. You throw a player my way. I'll see if I can make him look good. All right, Ravens DST is top 2. We'll go to our next game in a moment. But if you haven't signed up yet for BetMGM, you can use the bonus code FANTASY and get an awesome offer up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. So here's how it works. Just download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you're going to get up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. Cincinnati is at Pittsburgh. 2025 question for you. Chase Brown or T. Higgins? And I know there's a lot of moving parts. So let me just, right now, you had to guess. You have to obviously pick a destination for T. Higgins. Who do you think is going to be a better fantasy value next year? Who do you think is going to go first, Chase Brown or T. Higgins?
Chase Brown.
T. Higgins in PPR and Chase Brown in non.
Man, Chase Brown's been playing like a first-round pick. What stops him from being that good in 2025?
Competition.
The Bengals deciding that we don't want to give him 400 touches in a season, so we should find somebody better than Zach Moss to share with him.
Okay. What if it is Zach Moss? What if it's just him? It's not going to be him.
I mean, it could be.
He signed a 1-year deal, right?
I believe so, but look, could be Khalil Herbert if they want to keep him, as a backup there. Maybe they finally decide to buy into Travion Williams.
No, it was a 2-year deal. Sorry.
Well, and also I'm going to be a lot more confident in Chase Brown if they keep their coach. I'll be a little bit more concerned if they make a change, and I think that has to be at least a consideration if you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and miss the playoffs.
All right. How about
I would guess the defense coordinator goes first, and then it's another year of let's see what they do.
All right, how about we get to the starts and sits? So start your Bengals. Jamie, you were high on Mike Gesicki on the waiver wire show. How do you feel about him now?
Still a top 12 guy for me. I think, first off, the Steelers have been miserable against tight ends lately. And he did have 5 for 53 game against them. I think it was 53 yards, but he had over 10 PPR points. And so just looking at the position, and I really do think that if they struggle to run the ball, so like Khalil Herbert's in a great spot, but if this game does become a track meet, which it certainly was the last time, then we're going to see, Joe Burrow 40 plus pass attempts, which is not surprising. And I think if this is his last game of the year, he's going out throwing. So, we're going to see a lot of fireworks through the air. So that's the type of game where Gesicki has a chance to succeed. So nothing like what he did last week. I think closer to the 5 for 53 is realistic. So 10 PPR points is probably the ceiling.
Wow. Okay, sorry. I'm going to take it off track again. I'll try not to do this the entire show because I know this is important. But Zach Taylor is 45 and 52 in his career?
Yep, made a Super Bowl. That goes a long way, I guess.
It does.
We should talk more about Khalil Herbert here. He's top 18 or so in the rankings. And I'll give you some names. Breece Hall or Khalil Herbert.
Herbert.
Devon Achane or Khalil Herbert.
Achane.
Tyrone Tracy Jr. or Khalil Herbert.
Tracy.
Corum or Herbert.
Herbert.
Herbert or Flowers.
Herbert.
Flowers in full PPR, Herbert and everything else.
Herbert or Pickens.
Pickens.
Herbert's
got 4 games in the last 2 years with 15 plus touches, and 3 of them I think he's gone for like 19 PPR points.
He's always been productive when he's gotten work. Now he's always been bad in pass protection too, so he probably won't play on third down. That's my guess. But the Bengals are 10th in the NFL in running back targets on first and second down. You know how it is. I mean, Joe Mixon didn't play on third down. He still was routinely about a 50-catch guy, or at least on pace for that.
They have of their 16 games, 13 times a running back has had 13 plus PPR points.
Yeah, it's a great situation. It is a good run defense, though. I should point that out. I mean, they do give up touchdowns. They give up fantasy points, but pretty good run defense. All right, on the other side of the ball, do we like Russell Wilson this week?
Top 12 quarterback.
Borderline.
So you'd have to start him over anyone you had questions about, like Jordan Love or Justin Herbert, I would assume. Anyone that you think might get pulled?
Yes, I think if you're making that decision, you should probably start Russell Wilson. Herbert is the tricky one because Herbert can go completely nuclear against the Raiders if they want him to, and they're totally dependent on each other.
The last time Wilson faced the Bengals, he had by far his best game. 29 of 38, 414 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 32.9 fantasy points. All right, who likes Jaylen Warren better than Najee Harris?
Assuming that he's healthy, I do.
Yep.
But not better than Khalil Herbert.
No, Herbert over the Steelers, guys.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, Warren's got 2 good games in a row. 14.2 points at Baltimore, 16.2 points at Kansas City in full PPR. He had 5 catches in both of those games, and he's got basically the same amount of carries as Najee Harris in the last 3 weeks. And
He
Najee
should have had a bigger game against the Chiefs. To go back to your point about the rushing totals, he had a rushing touchdown call back on a holding call.
Yeah, and that would have been his 2nd touchdown of the year. Najee is what? Is he a top 24 guy for you?
He still is. Yes, he also had a big game against the Bengals.
He did.
He's just outside of the top 24.
Yeah, he had, I think, his best game of the year. Must have been.
Yeah, he had 6 catches in that game. So that's the last time he caught the ball.
Yeah, he's had 3 in the next 4 games since that Cincinnati game.
It's very weird.
And how do we feel about Pickens trying to bounce back from an 8 PPR fantasy point game against the Chiefs, where he was really frustrated, kept taking his helmet off. Luckily, he did not get penalized for it. But how do we feel about Pickens this week, Heath?
I think you have to start him in a week like this. It's a good matchup. He's got the big upside potential, and we expect he's going to play the whole game. So that makes him a starter. He's a number 2 wide receiver.
Just get 7 or more targets. There have been 16 wide receivers with 7 or more targets against the Bengals. All of them have scored double-digit PPR fantasy points. 12 of the 16 have scored 15.8 or more PPR fantasy points. And Pat Freiermuth or Mike Gesicki?
Freiermuth, I mean, he's been on fire, and he had a great game.
Fryer.
Yeah, look at his numbers. He's got 3 touchdowns in his last 5 games, or last 4 games. He had a great game. The best game of the season was against the Bengals. Bengals are number 1 in most fantasy points allowed to tight ends. Like, this is a great situation for him.
Did you miss my joke?
But Fryer.
Fryer, yeah. I thought the targets would go down with Pickens back because his hot streak has sort of been with Pickens out, but he had 8 targets last week. So, hooray. All right, Houston's at Tennessee, 2025. Oh, I'm sorry. No DSTs in that game, right?
No.
All right, here we go. Houston's at Tennessee, 2025 questions. Anybody feeling a CJ Stroud bounce back next year, and to what degree?
I don't think he could be worse.
It would be hard to be worse, but it's gonna, like, this is a team that's got to figure some things out in terms of their pass catchers. Because Diggs, they made that big move to change it to a 1-year deal, and he's on the ACL anyway, so they probably wouldn't want him back. Tank Dell, I don't think you can expect anything from him next year. So it's pretty much just Nico Collins. Like, they're going to have to go get a good number 2 wide receiver.
Okay.
If they like Deontay Johnson, it makes a lot of sense for him to stay.
Yeah, could have been a pretty savvy pickup there.
Yeah.
All right. So for this game, how are you guys approaching the Texans? What did you say, Jamie? That D'Amico Ryan said everyone needs to be ready?
Yeah, I would anticipate this almost like a preseason game. So I've downgraded almost everybody for them. Joe Mixon was a top 10 running back when I started doing the rankings. Now I have him just outside the top 24, just with the anticipation of him maybe getting a drive or 2. Nico Collins was top 5 receiver. Now he's, again, outside the top 24, just with the idea of not playing very much. And CJ Stroud is someone you can completely get away from because he hasn't been good even when he's been playing. So it doesn't seem like they really have nothing to play for. So I understand you want to get your offense going a little bit here. To what extent, we'll find out. It'd be very strange if they played everybody, especially after what Heath just said. Losing Diggs during the season, losing Tank Dell in the fashion that he was hurt. Again, they're competitive games. Not to say that they weren't, but the last thing they can afford is another significant injury.
And what I'm looking at here still shows that they are a 1-point underdog to the Titans. That line's moved around a lot. I think they went to be a favorite for a couple of days after Ryan said they were going to play, but I think you're looking at a quarter maybe for the starters. Maybe you get a half, but I don't want to start any Texans.
And it's just a guess for us. It's just a guess. So if you're out there, you want to ask us, hey, should I start Nico Collins or this guy? Our guess is kind of as good as yours. It's a really tough spot to be in to play in Week 18.
This is one of those where they could have big numbers, or one or two of the guys could have big numbers in the first quarter.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of, I think it was Carson Wentz maybe a couple of years ago. Had like a 3, or Nick Foles maybe. Somebody had like a 3-touchdown first quarter. Kirk Cousins. There was something where they weren't supposed to play very much.
Oh, I think it was Cousins.
Yeah.
I think it was Cousins in Week 17. Schaefer would know. Schaefer, what do we think? Was it Cousins? Week 18? Schaefer's not with us today.
Mm-mm.
All right.
That's
Schaefer's
all right.
taking the year off. New year, new podcast producer. Okay. Oh, Jamie, remember should I talk about what I wrote in my notes about the Texans against quarterbacks?
Titans, right?
The Titans, yeah. I don't know what the hell this was. I put stats in my notes, and then I try to sort of look at all the stats and sum it up with a sentence or two, like exactly what I just said about wide receivers with 7 or more targets against the Bengals. And I was reading my notes from Week 17 about how quarterbacks do against the Titans. I have a section about mobile quarterbacks against the Titans, and I wrote, I don't know, I have no idea why I wrote this. I wrote terrible. This is mobile quarterbacks against Tennessee. Terrible. Among the worst in the NFL in allowing rushing touchdowns. Okay, sorry, let's start over. Among the worst of the NFL in allowing rushing touchdowns and rushing yards to my wife. I have absolutely no idea why I typed that. But I don't know if I was like talking to her while I typed it, but Very strange, but yeah, she's
When he
she's gonna have a big
texted that
game.
to me last night, he goes, "Why would I write this?" And I said, "You really had a crush on Tyjae Spears."
Yeah. So crazy. All right. So on Tennessee's side, they said they're going to start both quarterbacks. So we're going to start
Play
neither.
both. You can't start both. Play both.
That's true. They're going to play both quarterbacks. You never know what could line up in the backfield. How about the running backs as it stands right now with Spears not practicing and Pollard limited? Heath, how do you feel about the Titans running backs?
If Tony Pollard plays without Tyjae Spears, then I think you start Tony Pollard. If they're both out, then Julius Chestnut is amongst the lower of the backup running backs.
It's a good name to know, though, if you're in DFS or something like that.
Yeah, I nearly made Pollard the start of the week because he missed last week's game with an illness. The fact that he practiced on a limited basis, like he's got huge opportunity here, and it'd be a little surprising if he got the 2 touchdown incentive that he needs, but it's not crazy. The yardage he should be able to get to whatever, I forget the mark is. I can look it up, but he should get at least one of his incentives.
And do we feel really good about Ridley and Okonkwo if we think the Texans are not playing their guys along?
I think, again, it's a matter of which quarterback is going to play and how they will favor their respective guys, because we have not seen Will Levis and Chigga Okonkwo connect. It's not like Okonkwo's been hurt throughout the season. He just started doing this when Rudolph took over. So did they change something in the game plan, or did it, come from a quarterback situation? Now, Okonkwo did have a 70-yard touchdown against the Texans in the first meeting, and that was his only catch.
Yeah. Well, is Ridley at least an easy start?
No.
He's not an easy start at all.
I mean, I'm not sure why I'd be bothered by the fact that they're going to be rotating quarterbacks. Who cares? He's been like kind of the same guy with both quarterbacks, and he's facing a team that, one, is bad against wide receivers to begin with, and two, is going to probably be pulling their guys. In a week like this, Ridley, I feel like, is one of the safer bets.
I think there's a pretty big difference in his total targets when he's played with Levis and when he's played with Rudolph. The last 3 games, he has 5, 5, and 6 targets. That's awful.
He's okay, but for the last 7 games, he only has 1 game with more than 7 targets to begin with. And it was against Jacksonville with Will Levis. But other than that, I mean, the 3 games before that, 6, 6, 7. So it is just a straight up target problem for Cal.
I see a difference between 6, 6, 7, 12 and 5, 5, 6.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's fair. And the pass.
I think he's just a number 3 receiver. So I have him, for me, it's in a similar range of Zay Flowers and slightly ahead of Jerry Jeudy, so not a must start receiver for me, but certainly a starter in 3 receiver leagues.
Okay. And why do you have the Texans DST top 8? Are you going to consider changing that?
I keep lowering them. I mean, at first they were top 3.
All right. All right, let's take one more break, and we'll talk about the Dolphins and the Jets when we come back. That's a pretty interesting game because, both teams could be going for a win here, even though it's a much more important game for the Dolphins. We'll be right back on FFT. The Dolphins are at the Jets. 2025 question. Garrett Wilson or Tyreek Hill?
I will go with Garrett Wilson for right now. And this kind of goes back, and I've talked about this before, is I don't often predict bounce back seasons for guys over 30. And so they do happen occasionally, but I'm probably going to be pretty low on Tyreek Hill going into next year. And I can understand being low on Wilson as well. There's a lot of uncertainty as to whether Aaron Rodgers or Devontae Adams will be on that team.
All right, Jamie, real quick, Garrett Wilson or Tyreek Hill next year? What do you think?
Just given the roster situations, I'll probably be Tyreek Hill, not by much, over Wilson, because if it's Rodgers, I don't know if I want to trust anything that's going on with the Jets, especially if Adams is still there.
Is Wilson on the Jets?
That's there's just so many moving parts to this, so is Wilson there? Like, I spoke to somebody who's close to the GM coaching situation over the weekend in the search that they're doing. And I asked the question, they have to be favoring Wilson, like, because there's no there. It's the owner is the only one that's still there, and you can't be looking at this and saying, while he's complaining, his complaints are a little ridiculous because he's fourth in the NFL going into last week, fourth in the NFL in targets, saying you're not getting the ball is crazy. But he's still like, you have really taking out you have two skill players that are huge assets to a coach and a GM in Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. Like, you have to make them happy and not the 40-year-old quarterback and the 32-year-old wide receiver. So it'd be very surprising if Wilson's not there. In any event, I do think Tyreek Hill, they're most likely running it back. While I agree, agree with Heath, I'll be lower on him than certainly this year. I think there's still enough upside in comparison to what Wilson's situation might be.
All right, so Dolphins-Jets for Week 18. Who are the easy starts in this game?
Achane, Hill, and Jonnu are starters. And then
How is Achane, and he's not an easy? Is he an easy start for you? Because he has been just brutal without Tua.
He has been. So he's probably lower than I've ever had him ranked. But then it's like, I'm not starting Khalil Herbert over him. You know, it's like I'm not getting that cute with it.
I'd like for you to make a list, Adam, of who are the easy starts in Week 18.
Well, I think, look, these are the PPR points per game for Devon Achane in 5 games without Tua. 8.8, 5.9, 2.7, 10.5, 5.8. It's horrible. Why wouldn't I start Khalil Herbert over that?
I mean, again, you can.
You know what? I'm going to do it.
Go ahead. Yeah, you can start.
He's definitely not a DFS play because he's going to be priced too high.
Right.
I also think, you know, the games that you're referencing prior to last week were all still competitive games. Like the fact that they couldn't get their run game going against the Browns was pretty disappointing, especially after what they had just done to San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so that was my hope for last week was, okay, no Tua, they're going to run the ball, they're going to have success running the ball. He looked awesome against the 49ers, and he stunk.
What about Michael Carter? Would you start Michael Carter over? How about both running backs in this game? You start Michael Carter over Achane and or Breece Hall?
No, but you can certainly make an argument for Breece Hall. Actually, I think I would do it over Breece Hall. I'm terrified of Breece Hall at this point. Like, I don't even know why he's playing.
So you like Achane better than Hall?
I do.
Okay. Yeah. And
Tua hasn't been ruled out yet, to be fair.
Yeah, everything changes if Tua plays. Do you like the Jets receivers?
Lower than they've been in a long time. I don't think Rodgers finishes the game, to be honest with you. Like, I think he gets his 500 and he's done.
I'm not sure that Rodgers coming out of the game is a negative to either Adams or Wilson.
It's probably negative for Adams. I imagine if Rodgers is out with the 500, whether Adams gets it or not.
I was surprised how late Adams played with Taylor last week. Like, he just stayed in the game with him and then got hurt and then tried to come back into the game.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. I was watching it very intently.
Yeah.
Game. All right. So who's the highest ranked receiver in this game?
Hill.
It's Adams for me.
Followed by rank the 3 of them.
Adams, Wilson, Hill.
Hill, Adams, Wilson for me.
And Jalen Waddle would not be a thought if he plays.
No, he would be last.
Yeah.
Does he hurt Tyreek Hill in your opinion if he plays?
Yeah. Although they both crushed the Jets last time, but that was 2.
Would you guys start the tight ends in the Bengals-Steelers game over Jonnu Smith?
No.
I would start Freiermuth over him.
That's obviously with Huntley, not with Tua. And would you give any consideration to Tyler Conklin if he plays this week? Most of his production, almost all of it, came with Tyrod Taylor last week, but he's got 5, 7, and 8 targets in his last 4 games.
It's still too tough to trust.
He's a tight end too.
Any interest in the quarterbacks in this game?
None.
Rodgers over Huntley.
Rodgers had his best game throwing the ball of the season against the Dolphins. For only game over 300 yards and under 20 fantasy points.
Okay. Start a DST in this game?
Dolphins.
Okay. Over the Texans?
100%.
Jacksonville is
unless you told me the Texans were playing the full game.
Jacksonville at Indianapolis, 2025 question. Can a new coach make Trevor Lawrence a must-start quarterback?
You could just get a good offensive mind like Doug Peterson. I think he'll be okay.
No, Doug Peterson was a washed-up, like, bad hire. He had one good year, and then everyone figured him out.
Okay, Doug Peterson has a higher career winning percentage than Zach Taylor.
As a offensive mind, I'm just saying Doug Peterson had one good year, and then he got figured out. Like, he won the Super Bowl, and then he has not been a good offensive coach since then.
Well,
Could
I
a-
wouldn't.
No, you can say no, Heath. You could just say no. It's fine. Say no.
No,
Yes,
I'm just saying if I was a young offensive minded coach, I feel like I might not want to try that because everybody's going to think I'm not a good offensive mind.
You wouldn't go to Jacksonville. You're saying I would go to Jacksonville.
from what you hear in
pick.
NFL circles, it sounds like that's where Ben Johnson would like to go. But I think he would only like to go there if Trent Baalke is gone.
Sorry, they're fifth pick right now. And obviously a great building block at wide receiver. All right, so sounds like Heath is a no on that. Could Ben Johnson make
Maybe.
Trevor Lawrence?
I mean, we've seen it. He hasn't been mediocre for as long as some of the guys that are now good. Like Sam Darnold's good now. So who knows?
It's true. You
No
never know.
one is going to draft Trevor Lawrence as a starter in one quarterback leagues. He will be in that group of guys if Ben Johnson is there as take a chance on this guy as your number 2 quarterback. And if he doesn't get off to a good start, you'll be cutting him. Could he have a Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold type of, rebound on the same team? Yes.
He could.
Yeah. No disrespect to Calvin Ridley, but Brian Thomas Jr. is definitely the best receiver that he's going to play with, and that could elevate him. All right, so for this week,
Not Zay Jones.
is Brian Thomas Jr. the only must start for the Jaguars, or can we get one of their running backs in there in a good matchup?
Too tough to trust. I mean, look at what Tyrone Tracy did with 23 touches last week.
Yeah, not good. But that was unusual because they've been pretty bad against running backs, but 2 good games in a row for their defense against running backs for the Colts.
Please
All
don't
right.
say Colts and defense ever again.
All right. How do you feel about the Colts? Jonathan Taylor is a must start, obviously. Is anyone else a must start in this game?
No.
If Flacco is starting, Pittman's a borderline must start guy. Josh Downs is back in the mix if you're still willing to trust him, but obviously last week was disappointing. And then if you're looking for a great DFS play, is Alec Pierce. I mean, coming off the game that he just had and the matchup that he has.
Downs and Pittman are number 3s with Flacco, number 4s with Richardson.
I would start Pittman if Flacco starts over Zay Flowers, over Jerry Jeudy, over Calvin Ridley.
I have him over Ridley, but not the other guys.
I just don't understand why Downs was so uninvolved last week, because
I don't understand it either.
Previously with Flacco, look at the 9 targets, 12 targets, 9 targets, 9 targets, 10 targets. One of those games did no Michael Pittman, but only 4 targets last week. If things go back to the way they were, Downs would be a really good start.
Right.
Yes. Another
Maybe
great
it might.
DFS play just with the idea of that.
All right, if Richardson plays, would you start him this week? Is he I think Russell Wilson, you said, was a top 12 quarterback. If Richardson plays against the Jaguars, would you rather have Wilson or Richardson?
Just given the uncertainty of his back, I'd probably start Wilson given his matchup.
So I'm going to give some real week 18 analysis now. If you're in one of those leagues where like everybody's playing against everybody for total points, then I'd prefer Richardson.
One of those leagues that we just found out about?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it would depend on what spot you're in the standings.
Well, I assumed that was just week 18 only. Like
Oh,
you're just
the week 18 only.
yes.
right. You just high score wins. I'd rather play Richardson than Wilson.
Yes, yes.
by the way, anybody want to start Brenton Strange in a great matchup?
No.
Okay. Anybody want to start the Colts DST?
They will play well because that's just the nature of what we do. They will play well.
Kansas City's at Denver. 2025 question. Do you think Cortland Sutton is a top 24 wide receiver in drafts?
No.
He will be close, but this is another team to watch what they do this offseason. Does Wilson's salary come off the books this year?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I do not know.
Because if they have money to spend, this could be a T. Higgins spot.
Is this a start them all, sit them all game?
If there was a running back in Denver, maybe, but there's not.
Right, but Nick Sutton. Yeah, it's start them all. So I guess I meant like start the guys that you would typically start. Nick's
Yes, Nick's is a must-start quarterback, and Sutton is a must-start receiver.
The Broncos have 2 dead cap hits next year. $32 million to Russell Wilson, $250,000 to Greg Dulcich.
So do you like Cortland Sutton better than the waiver wire running backs like Khalil Herbert and Michael Carter?
I mean, look, he's been so consistent for the most part. He's had 2 somewhat disappointing games in his last 5, and that was really when Knicks had disappointing games. So if you trust that Knicks is going to play well, and he had 20 fantasy points against the Chiefs in Arrowhead, which is really what kind of started him off as a must-start fantasy quarterback, that stretch of games, they're benching everybody of significance. Like McDuffie's not going to play, so their best corner is not going to be there. Chris Jones is not going to play, so their best pass rusher or their best defensive player is not going to be there. I'm trusting Cortland Sutton.
10.5 point spread here. The Broncos are favored.
Are the Dolphins games at the same time as this one? Is that right?
Yeah, both in the 4:25 p.m. Window. I'm pretty sure they're both at 4:25. If not,
as a Chiefs fan,
yeah,
you want the Dolphins in, right?
I don't know. It's like there's a lot of competing pettiness to go here. Like it's the division. It'd be pretty hilarious to knock your division rival out playing your backups. It'd be pretty hilarious to lose and have the Bengals all off season say the Chiefs are afraid of our 9-win team. Be pretty hilarious, or 8-win team. Be pretty hilarious to have to knock Tyreek Hill out of the playoffs by letting the Broncos win.
Did you see what he tweeted?
Yeah, he's a big fan of Kansas City. I'm sure that there's lots of players in the organization who returned that feeling.
Did you see it, Adam?
Yeah, we talked. What did he say? Like
you brought it up yesterday, didn't you?
Yeah, I thought so.
Oh.
I didn't. Someone did. I thought
you did. Maybe not. Maybe Jamie did.
I didn't see the tweet, but I thought we talked about it on the show. Yeah, he's rooting for the Chiefs. Did he say like, Happy New Year to the Chiefs or something like that?
Happy New Year, Kansas City.
Yeah.
And people were like, "What are you doing?" And then the smart people that were commenting were like, "He needs the Chiefs to win."
Yeah. Would you start Jaleel McLaughlin, who I would assume would be your favorite Broncos running back, or Travis Etienne?
ETN still, but that's close.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go ETN.
How about your favorite Chiefs running back or Jaleel McLaughlin?
That's the thing with the Chiefs running backs. Like, I don't know if it's going to be all Carson Steele because, Heath brought this up the first time that they played because there was still the question of who was going to be the guy with Kareem Hunt at that point. And was this going to be remember Samaje Perine was getting a little hot and that was the team that cut him this offseason. So could this be a Samaje Perine game? Now, I would be surprised if it is because he still plays a pretty significant role for them. And you have Pacheco banged up again. So it seems like this should be just the games that you referenced earlier, Michael Perine and Darwin Thompson. Like this feels like a Carson Steele game. But the Broncos need to win this game, and their run defense is still pretty good.
This is one of those situations, too, where, like, you can't – and I think Pete said this before. You can't sit everybody. Like, you're going to have to play some guys. And you can't sit DeAndre Hopkins and Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy and Pacheco and Kareem Hunt and Samaje Perine. Like, you're going to have to play some of these guys. You can only make so many inactive. You can only bring so many guys up. I was looking on their practice squad. They do have Keontae Ingram. But I don't think Pacheco or Hunt are going to play.
No, Pacheco's certainly not. He's hurt.
Well, if history is our guide, remember, 2 times in the last 4 years, they've rested their starters in the final week, and they gave LaMichael Perine 24 touches in 2023, and they gave Darwin Thompson 21 touches in 20.
And that's the thing. I don't even remember if those guys were on the active roster the week before.
So
they may have been practice squad guys.
So DeAndre Hopkins has some pretty big incentives for this week, one of which is playing the game. So you assume he's going to be on the field to start the game, and then he comes off. You would assume the receivers are going to be Juju. I think Marquise Brown probably plays because why would you not give him the opportunity to run a few routes and get a few more reps in after being out for the entire time? So he's someone that I think is still in play. Beyond those two, it's Justin Watson, Juju, and Marquise Brown, I think could be the 3 receivers. Carson Steele and Samaje Perine make sense as the running backs, with Steele most likely getting the majority of work. To me, the question is who's the offensive line? You're not playing Creed Humphrey. There's no way you're going to risk him getting hurt. You're not playing Tooney at this point.
Reed referenced that, and I think what he said was in past years, we've just played most of the offensive line, but we just rotate them a lot. Make sure nobody has to play for too long. I'm afraid they're going to play. I can't say his last name the right way. I'm sorry, Kingsley Suamatia, but that would be really bad for Carson Wentz because he's not been able to block anyone in the NFL.
Can I just be honest with you guys? Just a moment of honesty here.
Yeah.
I'm very bored by this discussion. I think we should move on.
This is the thing. This is for 55 minutes of Heath, you've got to take this seriously. Heath, choose between these 4 running backs all projected for 11 points that we don't know if they're going to play or not. But now I'm bored.
Yes, talking about the rotation of the Chiefs offensive, this is all of it. It's because we're not going to start any of these guys. We're not going to start Hopkins if he plays. We're not going to start Marquise Brown. All right, Denver DST. I thought that would be a funny moment of honesty. I hope he came off that way. Denver DST is top 3. Chargers are at the Raiders. 2025 question. Ladd McConkey, or I know he's not in this game, Marvin Harrison Jr.
Assuming the Chargers do not add another significant wide receiver, I'll take McConkey.
Ladd.
Okay. Remember, if the Steelers beat Cincinnati on Saturday, the Chargers are locked into the sixth seed. If the Steelers lose, the Chargers can get the 5 seed, the coveted 5 seed. Instead of having to face Baltimore in round 1, in all likelihood, they'd be able to
everybody wants that seed.
Oh, yeah. Even I want the 5 seed. Starters. Okay. So that's the problem here. What are you guys doing about your Chargers? Is it a similar situation to the Texans? Probably not. It's probably better than that. Jamie, what are we doing about our Chargers here?
No, the Texans reference is correct. It's probably expecting them to play maybe a half. Why would you risk it more than that for a meaningless game if they don't have to win? So I still think Dobbins will get an opportunity to get his incentive. So it's somewhere close to 60 yards rushing. I think it's 58 yards rushing. Whatever he's short of 900 yards. And with that opportunity comes a chance to score. So I still think he's worth starting. McConkey is a little bit more risky. So Herbert more risky. I think you just treat those guys. Look, they were great in the first half last week against the Patriots. They could do the same thing against the Raiders too. So McConkey would still be a number 2 receiver. Right now I have him ranked as a number 1 guy. Herbert I have ranked as a number 1 guy. I'm hoping at this point that the Bengals win and we get the Chargers on Sunday.
That's what we're expecting the Bengals to win, right?
I mean, it's the Bengals. They lost at home to the Steelers.
It should be a good game. Should be better than the first game that day.
Yeah.
Ravens Browns. So if the Steelers lose, the Chargers should have a pretty good offensive game here. We're going to be pretty excited about them.
Correct.
All right, on the other side of the ball, I think it's kind of interesting here. We're going to like Abdullah if he plays. And then Jacoby Myers, obviously Bowers is a must start. What about Myers?
He's a low end number 2 receiver.
Yeah, I'm starting him.
Yeah, I mean the Raiders have some starts here. So Abdullah or Breece Hall.
Abdullah.
Abdullah if he gets in a full practice. Breece Hall otherwise.
Correct. And Hall over Madison if that's the choice.
Abdullah or Aaron Jones at Detroit.
Jones.
Abdullah or Brian Robinson Jr. at Dallas.
Abdullah, especially if Austin Eckler returns.
I'll put Brian Robinson in the same category. If Abdullah's limited going into the game, I'll start Robinson. But otherwise, if Abdullah's a full go, I'll give him a start.
You like Abdullah better than Jacoby Myers?
Yes.
No.
Okay. All right. And Buffalo's at New England. Ooh, I don't have a 2025 question ready for this one. Would you guys like to provide one, or would you like me to think of it?
2025
Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson?
Josh Allen. or Drake May? Probably Josh Allen. Who's your final? Like, who's your pick for MVP?
MVP? It's Josh Allen.
It's not over yet. I don't have to vote until after week 18.
Allen's done. Like, he's gonna barely play.
I think from the voters, it's over if Allen doesn't play.
You think it's gonna go to who?
Allen?
I mean, just from what you hear, it just seems like Allen's going to get it. Like, you know, the push for Lamar makes a ton of sense.
Right.
But, you know, it's so fascinating to see what these guys. What it comes down to me is, for me, is Allen is needed more on his team, I think, than Lamar is needed on his team for them to be successful.
I'll just say that I think the best argument from the Josh Allen backers is that Josh Allen should have won it last year, which I wouldn't necessarily disagree with. And so you can't give it to Lamar for the same reason you didn't give it to Allen last year. But
Correct.
If we're just looking at this season in a vacuum and the statistics and their production and their, like, I don't think it's really that. I think Lamar should be pretty close to unanimous.
Yeah, I think there's a great case for Allen, especially when I heard that stat about like Lamar Jackson throwing to the most wide open players. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah, I think that he has something to do with that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. But Allen definitely has the worst weapons, I would say, around him. But I'm a Jackson guy. I just don't think it should be unanimous. All right, here's my 2025 question for this game. Who's going to be your highest ranked Bills wide receiver next year?
Shakir.
I hope he's not on the team for Josh Allen's sake. I hope that they go get him a number one again, because that would be better.
All right, who are we starting in this game? Buffalo at New England.
Ray Davis is my favorite Bills player right now.
Do you like him better than any Patriot?
Yeah. So here, the one thing about it is, so is Josh Allen just going to go out, do a drive, and then sit to get his consecutive start streak going, or is he actually going to play?
I think the first one, I'd lean that way.
Also, I do not want to hear when Lamar has 5 touchdowns against the Browns, a bunch of Bills fans saying Lamar's padding his MVP case, and then Josh Allen goes out there for one drive so he can keep his start streak alive.
What if he goes out for one play? What if he goes out, hands off, and leaves?
He's going to go out, hand the ball off one time to Ray Davis, and jog off the field.
I do think James Cook plays also. He's 19 yards away from 1,000 yards rushing. So I would guess they try to get him that.
And you have this possibility of the Patriots playing their guys, winning the game, having a big game, and, you know, Drake May having a big game. But you also have this possibility of the Patriots pulling their guys because they don't want to lose the number 1 pick, which they currently have.
It's a fascinating situation here. I'm surprised they're actually playing Drake May, to be honest with you. The big question that's uncertain from the Patriots standpoint is who's the running back, because that guy could have a big game. Ramondre Stevenson was on his way to a huge game against the Bills in a competitive game 2 games ago, and this was the game where he fumbled and, you know, didn't get the backward pass that led to the, you know, ultimately the game-winning play. But he, you know, his snap count was fine last week. He had 3 touches.
Yeah. The backwards pass that went in the end zone, one of the Bills was just circling the ball like, come on, anybody want to pick it up? Finally did. All right, so this is a really difficult game to trust anyone. I mean, you might go with Hunter Henry. Heath, you have Hunter Henry 6th. Jamie would probably have him higher, if not for the fact that we don't know how long these guys are going to play. But this is kind of an annoying game with a ton of question marks.
It might be the toughest one to figure out, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Right. We don't know. I don't know if we have another game where we don't know about both teams, right, and how many of their starters they'll play.
And the line kind of tells you, I think, that even with the Bills backups, they'll still think they can win. Yeah.
Oh, let's go Bills. Let's go Eagles. All right, let's read some emails at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Some week 18 questions from VJ Davidson, who's a YouTube subscriber. Thank you very much. He says, shout out to Heath's Deadpan and Jamie's dog. And Jamie's dog did make an appearance today, so good stuff. All right, Kyler or Tua, or grab a Colts or Colts quarterback or Josh Dobbs off the waiver wire? Who's your favorite quarterback?
Kyler.
Kyron Williams? No, you can't start him. Or Amir Abdullah? Definitely Amir Abdullah.
Might not have Abdullah though, so
You could also pick up Ray Davis or Blake Corum or Michael Carter. You could pick up anybody.
Khalil Herbert.
Herbert would be the preferred one. Carter would be second.
Kenneth Gainwell.
He didn't say Herbert. So of Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, Blake Corum, Michael Carter, who's your guy?
Carter.
Yeah.
Wide receivers. I don't know how many he needs, but Nico, Cortland Sutton, Malik Neighbors, Jalen McMillan.
Nico would be my least favorite just as of right now.
Yep. Sutton and McMillan, I think, are my favorites.
Neighbors is my favorite of the rest.
Neighbors.
Pretty crazy that he's going to have more receptions than Puka and not catch Powers.
I'm ready for them to sit Neighbors now. Like, we can sit Neighbors. Let's just bench him. Chig Okonkwo or Njoku's probably not going to play, so go with Chig. And all right, thank you, VJ. Next question is from Mario. He needs 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and a flex, and a tight end. Would you make any changes? He has Trey McBride and Mark Andrews. We're going to stick with McBride. Would you put Mims in over any of these guys? McMillan, Zacchaeus, Corum, Ray Davis, Tyrone Tracy Jr.
I think it's still too risky.
Mims?
I think I might go Mims over Zacchaeus.
Yeah, I would do that.
I mean, they're both coming off big games. Zacchaeus has done it twice now.
Maybe I wouldn't. I think I would do that just because Mims is facing the Chiefs backups. But
it's just revenge games for Zacchaeus, and he can't do it again.
No, I guess he could. From David, Thielen or Dobbins in flex?
I think Thielen is probably safer, but again, you'll know Saturday night. If the Chargers are playing to play their guys, then it's Dobbins.
Yeah, Dobbins for sure if the Bengals win.
From Paul, I'm up 13 points going into the second week of a championship. I've got Justin Herbert on my bench and Kyler Murray starting. Would you keep Kyler over Herbert?
I would play Herbert if they're playing.
Hey,
yeah, I would play Kyler either way.
That's what he just said. If the Bengals, okay, so he's going Kyler either way. But if the Bengals beat the Steelers, then the Chargers can be the 5 seed with a win. If the Steelers win, if the Steelers win, the Chargers are locked into the 6. Would you start Devontae Smith? No, we're not going to start Devontae Smith. Alvin Kamara is probably not going to play. Would you start Amir Abdullah over Brian Robinson Jr.?
Yes.
Depends on Abdullah's practice status.
Actually, you could start him over Jonnu Smith and keep Brian Robinson Jr. in your lineup.
Well, again, the Commanders may treat it like a preseason game and only play their guys for half.
Well, in that case, we wouldn't want to play Zacchaeus, right?
Correct. But it's the same thing. I mean, if the Broncos are up big, who do they start to pull?
All right, this is from Jason. My commissioner refuses to change championship week to week 17. I haven't left because it's a family league. Jordan Love or the waiver wire options?
Dobbs over Love.
Yeah.
It is, I should say, 2 points for every completion and -1 for an incompletion.
I mean, Dobbs was 3 for 4, if you want to go by that, against the Lions.
There you go.
I don't know that Jordan Love's going to have a ton of completions.
Right.
All right,
he doesn't throw much in regular games.
Right. From Steve, I have Saquon Barkley.
Revenge game for Josh Dobbs. I mean, this is a setup of all setups.
Should I play Blake Corum, Zach Charbonnet, or an Eagles backup? Pick 2.
Charbonnet's my start of the week, so he's going to reward us for all the people that got ruined by him last week. Who was it? Charbonnet, Corum, and who?
Eagles backups.
I like Gainwell slightly better than Corum.
I do too.
Okay.
Does it matter if Shipley potentially back?
It might, but
yeah.
Well, thanks thanks guys.
This is one that who are the Eagles able to sit? They can't sit everybody also. What do you know about their offensive line rotation, Heath? Can you take me through that?
I could walk you through it, but Adam would get bored. Doesn't like real football.
Oh my gosh, I love real football. I cannot wait for the play.
That Peach Bowl yesterday was awesome.
Oh, finally we had a good game. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then the Rose Bowl was not.
Oh my gosh, poor Oregon.
Yeah. Yeah. Terrible.
Ohio State looks nasty right now.
You should just tank for Jeremiah Smith in 2 years. That guy is going to the Hall of Fame. He could play 3 years in the NFL. He'll go in the Hall of Fame.
Here we go.
That's how good he is. Jeremiah Smith, the Buckeyes wide receiver, is unfreaking believable. He's of all the Buckeyes wide receivers, he's going to be the best.
So he can't come out for 2 years, right?
Yeah, he's a true freshman.
So you wonder, does he plays next year? Does he play the following year?
Oh yeah, he's going to play. Yeah, and he's going to just.
You can't say that after what your quarterback just did. He's going to guarantee he's going to play.
He played in a meaningless bowl game for at least a half. You think Jeremiah Smith's going to sit out a season? Come on now.
To get a record.
No, to be there, maybe to get a record. All right, we're out of here, folks.
You can't be happy with how that unfolded.
I couldn't care less, and nobody's
care less. You haven't won a bowl game in 13 years.
Who cares? Who cares? I don't.
You had a player. This is how funny this is. You had a player stay in college for 9 years. 9 years and not win a bowl game.
Well, no, he probably won a bowl game.
No, you haven't won a bowl game in 13 years.
He hasn't been on the team the whole 9 years. He's only been on the team for 3 years. You're talking about Cam.
He won a bowl game with somebody else.
Yeah, he won with Oregon. I'm pretty sure. You're talking about his tight end Cam McCormick, who played 8 or 9. Jamie says 9. I thought it was 8. He played 8 or 9 years in college.
9 years of college.
Yeah, he's 63 years old. No, the Hurricanes have won. He's won. All right, take care, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow with the NFC home games. See ya.